Well, now that you've gotten some insights into DARPA contracting, let's get into how to interpret and break down these DARPA opportunities. Bill Kaiser and Andy Detour will be taking the stage, joined by Simon Klink, Director of DARPA's Prototypes Division, and Dan Ridge from the Microsystems Technology Office, to share strategies on responding to DARPA solicitations effectively. Over to you on the main stage, Bill.
Thank you, Sana. So just a real quick survey partway through the day here. I talked to you this morning about, we're going to teach you how to take a journey, that there's a recipe on how to be successful for DARPA. How many of you learned something new here already this morning about ways to engage really a very exciting agency? Good. That's awesome. So presumably, now if you want to pursue DARPA, you've gotten to the point where I've talked to the PM, I have teammates, I understand how it works, and here's a BAA that finally hits the streets. Hopefully it's not new to you. Hopefully you know that it existed. Hopefully you've been to Industry Day, right? Because if not, as you heard, your chances tend to go down just a bit. It's good to have an understanding. So that's why this panel to me is very, very exciting. The BAAs drop. What's going to happen now? We always say we have great diversity here on stage, right? Dan has a government background. Simon's a contracts administrator. And Andy comes from industry, right? So resonating with your reviewers is really, really important, right? Because these guys are the people on the other end who are processing your proposal. So now the BAAs come out. There's some really fundamental questions and things that you should do whenever it happens. So I'll reach out to these, throw it out to these guys here. What's the first thing that should happen whenever that BAA hits the streets at this point, if you want to be a proposer?
Well, the first thing obviously is to read the BAA, and that is, we shouldn't have to say that, but that's something that goes overlooked a lot. We get people trying to swing at every pitch and doing it before they can read, and so read it first thing.
You took my line. I'm the contracts guy.
Well, but the PMs are the people who feel like we write the BAA.
True. I'll expand on that a little bit. Mac and John mentioned a couple of things that we put a lot of focus on, and that's designing programs so they're effective. I think the worst thing that happens is a program manager gets proposals in and he says, man, these missed the mark just a little bit. What did I tell the performers to do that they took action on that missed just a little bit? So everything we write now is usually specific to how the program manager foresees it executing. And I think there's unique aspects across everything where, once you see one government solicitation, especially from DARPA, it's not going to be the same next time. There will be nuances. So kind of foot stomping the why, read that, is that, we've looked at, does this need to be a system level solicitation, or can it be delayered to invite in more non-traditionals? All those aspects are kind of put out there in writing in the solicitation mechanism.
Anything you want to add, Andy?
Yeah, so I've gone through this a few times now, so I'll share sort of some tips for success. Realize that it's not just the program manager who will be reading your proposal and judging it, right? There's going to be subject matter experts, technical CETAs at DARPA that the program manager is going to have help provide feedback. And if it's a contract over $2 million, there needs to be at least 3 government reviewers, right? So there's multiple people that you need to convince that your idea is worth funding. And there's probably going to be a lot of proposals. So you need to make yours stand out to a broad audience. I think one of the most important things is to come right out on page 1, make it absolutely clear what is new in your approach. That third Hellmeyer question we talked about earlier. Because that is what you're going to lose your audience if on that first page they don't get excited about it. And so the proposals that usually win are the ones that are crafted so that you capture the attention of the reviewer right up front. I think that has put a lot of effort into page 1.
So, there's a couple of really, really good points here I'd like to reiterate. Read it, be compliant, and also tell a story, right? Nothing is worse as a proposal reviewer than to just read through a really difficult proposal, right? Andy said, put it up front. Tell them what you're going to tell them again. Make it very obvious that you understand the mission. And it's been my experience through writing gosh, a lot of proposals, hundreds through the years, that a formal process can really, really, really improve the quality of proposals. So again, I love audience participation. How many of you use something like a Shipley process to write proposals? Yeah, I encourage everybody to look that word up, right? Because it goes through a set of steps, right? You're storyboarding, you're writing drafts, you're red teaming, you're black teaming, you're white gloving, you're writing compliance matrices, all the things that really allow you to tell that story. Because in your head, you're telling a story. That doesn't mean anybody understands it. You want your peers to review it, right? We want them to say, yeah, it kind of breaks down here. It doesn't make any sense. So right from the start, I always encourage using a formal methodology to write proposals specifically to DARPA. So another thing that certainly that resonates with me is it takes a lot to write a proposal, not just your time, but a lot of investment, right? So you have to make some pretty critical decisions right away whether or not this proposal is right for you. So go back to you guys. Not only do you have to read it and be compliant, what are some decisions you have to make right up front that are going to make you more competitive and over the long run, whether you're an academic or a business, more competitive and more effective?
So I would say to that as the teams that craft the BAAs, we're doing it because we want to come out on the other side of the program with partners who have succeeded, right? The BAA is the document where we make an investment in your success, not just the success of the program. And so we want you to take a hard look at whether catching the bumper here is actually going to take your enterprise where you're trying to go. And that's, I think, one of the biggest sources of friction we have is we see sometimes intriguing proposals, but that don't make sense to build a base that's going to continue this business with.
Yeah, I think going back to the recommendation from Bill, the evaluation criteria are in the solicitation, and understanding how you will be looked at, how your proposal will be looked at, and what that means and how you write it, and ensuring that every technical miracle that you propose has a path to close, right? Don't leave a cliffhanger and say, if this happens, we'll be successful. Spend the time to go all the way through that and walk through the risk steps and what you'll do to mitigate those as you progress through the execution.
Can I add? Sure. Thank you for that. So one of the things that we see most, because the evaluation criteria that DARPA uses is so often rooted in technical feasibility, that if you include a miracle that we believe to be that your reviewer community believes to be counterfactual or impossible, that will pull down the entire rest of the proposal, because it's difficult for us to dice it and treat it severably and say, we think that this is, utterly infeasible, but otherwise the cost looks good.
Yeah, the other thing I'll just add that I didn't hear is around the metrics for the program. So again, DARPA, metrics-driven organization. Somewhere in that solicitation, whether it's a BAA or otherwise, there will be a metrics table, most likely. Pay attention to that. Spend a lot of time on it. Break out each metric individually. And as you're thinking about sort of understanding your approach and crafting your proposal, you have to address every single one. You can't skip any. If you skip one, it'll get noticed. So address every metric that the program is asking for.
I think one thing I'll add to sort of this section too is you do have to make a business decision at this point, right? If you haven't been involved in the conversation, if this looks foreign to you, as Andy said, you're not able to address every critical section of the BAA, you might need to walk away from it, right? You might have to make that hard decision. Even though it seems kind of relevant, you seem like you might have an idea. If you have a lot of questions about it at this point, you haven't been to industry day, you might need to walk away from it, right? You might not too, but these are expensive proposals to prepare in some respects, both from your time and from a monetary standpoint. You might need to walk away. You also have to make some decisions up front too about whether or not you have the right partners, or you might need to find partners. If you really can't address all that criteria, you can't fill out your compliance, you can't meet metrics, you might have to find that partner. And it may be too late at this point too. As you can tell, a lot of the DARPA work should be done up front to successfully capture a program. We'll move into the last section here that we sort of want to cover, right? There's two parts of these proposals. There are two parts of these BAAs. There's a whole lot of technical and there's a whole lot of administrative. And I'd like to kick it over to you, Simon, to start this off. How do you sort of separate those two, and where do you concentrate your time?
Yeah, I'll talk about, and the PMs can expand upon it here because they've been through it. But the first stage really is what we call a competition of ideas. You know, who has the idea that's going to meet the need as defined in the solicitation? On the back end of that selection process is the ability for that compliance to look at, you know, how realistic your cost is, to come through your risk mitigation strategies. But the front part that's going to catch the PM's kind of focus and idea is the ability to deliver on that idea that you put out there. I'll foot stomp again, and it's going to get annoying because I'll probably say it again. Read the solicitation. The compliance is part of it. And unfortunately, a lot of those are binary. A lot of those are in or out. So when you go back through and do your, you know, white hat, black hat reviews, ensure you have somebody focusing on that compliance section to ensure that you have submitted in accordance with the instructions.
Yeah, and this is kind of going back to the criteria that will be part of the BAA on how your proposal will be evaluated. Typically, it's three things. It's the scientific and technical merit. It's the contribution and relevance to DARPA's mission. And then it's the cost and schedule realism. Meaning, is the timeline and cost that you're proposing realistic for the work you're saying you're going to execute? It's not a question about whether it's a reasonable cost. It's a question about whether it's realistic. And, you know, that is an important part of the proposal process, thinking through your timeline, thinking through how much funding it would actually take to execute it. I've seen proposals that were way above and way below what's realistic for the work proposal. Spend time on that section.
I would say that, well, first of all, that's absolutely the case. One of the things I think that our performer base struggles with is to understand that we evaluate not only on the basis of, you know, technical and cost realism, but it's a solo event between your proposal and the reviewers, and that we are taking great care to not say, I liked the one I just read more, right? This is about your proposal. And so don't overthink what the other people who may have been in the room are trying to do. We're trying to put together a portfolio that responds to it. So be the thing you most want to be rather than worrying about who else you saw in the room on Industry Day.
All right, we're down to a couple minutes here. Any closing comments that you guys want to make about the proposal preparation and review process? I mean, we're going to talk quite a bit later on about things, do's and don'ts, but any special nuggets that any of you want to offer up at this point?
I would say we talked about proposals in response to a BAA. Of course, that is just one avenue to get to DARPA. The other one you'll see a lot are RFIs, or requests for information. I have one out right now, just plug, on manufacturing workforce development, and are there new things DARPA could do there? Check it out. It's on sam.gov. An RFI is a very clear signal that there is a program manager that wants to start a program in this area, but needs your input, needs more information. So RFIs are like a beacon that says a PM's raising his or her hand and wants you to engage. So that's a great door, a great way to get in early.
I would say that that's exactly the case, you know, as an RFI author myself, and that that not only is it a beacon, but that all of the PMs are trying to make sure that we respect and preserve the integrity of the procurement process. And so people, in fact, some of you may know PMs who are going to shut down and go dark as we do this to make sure we do not contaminate this acquisition. And so the RFIs really are our public way of kind of leading where PMs are going. And so they're incredibly valuable. And we lean into them for that purpose, because that's our best and most available, in the agency way to kind of give you a hint of where our headspace is.
Do I need to say it again? Read the solicitation. Thank you. No, I think that the points made across, and I'll reiterate, your proposal is evaluated by itself against the criteria. And that determines the selectable, non-selectable decision. There's no comparison during the evaluation process. There's no ranking. There's no colors. But what we do at DARPA, and we do a pretty good job at it, is giving the feedback. If you miss on a proposal, request those informal feedback sessions. We don't want you to go away. We want you to come back because you're important to our ecosystem to deliver national defense strategy and tactical surprise. So get the feedback, understand the misses, and try again.
What kind of one last thing? We're seeing more and more now proposals that are clearly written by Gen AI techniques. Be careful with that because it's obvious, and at times, I have examples of proposals where this team could not do what they said they would do, and so if you're going to use those tools, it's perfectly fine, right, to use ChatGPT or whatever your favorite thing is to help, but read it and write it yourself. And make sure you understand every word because every word's going to get evaluated.
Well, we're out of time. Thank you so much. I think there was great advice offered here. Remember, you're telling a story. Tell a compliant story. Tell a story that's compliant and resonates with the reviewers and meets the metrics and the mission of the organization. If you do that, you're very close to being competitive right from the start, right? Don't give anybody a reason to discount you. Don't make it obscure. Don't make it hard to read, right? There's an art in this. So embrace that art. Listen to what these three gentlemen said, and good luck with DARPA. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill, Andy, and Simon.